Hello, today's lesson 6.1, part 2. We're still evaluating roots and using rational exponents, but we're going to use them by solving equations. What you need to keep in mind when we solve an equation is to isolate where the exponent's at, and then you're going to undo the root. So usually we're used to having an x squared in our problem, and you square root both sides. This time we can have a cubed root, a fourth root, a fifth root, a sixth root. So we're just going to go ahead and get practicing, and we'll get started. And like I said, this section is still non-calculator, so we're going to use without a calculator. Okay, so x is by itself, the cubed is by itself, so what I'm going to do is cube root both sides. Now when it's an odd power, no need to put a plus or minus because we're only going to get one answer. So x equals 5. How do I know that? Because I have that chart memorized from yesterday. Okay, this problem I need to isolate my cube, so I'm going to go ahead and divide both sides by 6. Once I divide both sides by 6, I get 64. Then I'm going to cube root both sides. So again, how am I doing this? Because I know 4 to the third power is 64. So what I'm asking myself is what number times itself again is going to give me 64, and that's 4. Again, you don't need a plus or minus. Okay, let's go ahead and move on to equations that are a little bit trickier. Okay, up here, we need to get this x to the fourth by itself. So step 1 is to add 40 to both sides. Once I do that, I get 6x to the fourth equals 486. Go ahead and divide both sides by 6. I get x to the fourth equals 81. Now, I'm going to fourth root both sides. Because I'm doing an even root, I have 2 possible answers. So you do have to put a plus or minus in. So what number to the fourth power gives me 81? And that's 3. So my answer to this one is x equals plus or minus 3. At any time, if you want to pause the video and try these on your own, go ahead, but I do have 2 you tries at the end. Okay, next problem, we're going to add 6 to both sides. We need to get this whole term by itself. We cannot do any rooting of any of both sides until that is by itself, the exponent. So I get 3 times x plus 5 to the fourth power equals 48. Then we're going to go ahead and divide both sides by 3. So I get x plus 5 raised to the fourth power equals 16. Okay, now you can go ahead and fourth root both sides. Now be careful here. You're doing an even root to both sides. So on the left, we get x plus 5. On the right, we're going to get plus or minus what number to the fourth power gives me 16, and that's 2. So be careful. We're going to get 2 answers here. I'm going to go ahead and subtract 5 on both sides. Now you have 2 problems to do. You have negative 5 plus 2, which is negative 3. And you have negative 5 minus 2, which is negative 7. So this one has 2 answers. Be very, very careful of when you are doing even roots. Okay, let's go ahead and try this next one. There's nothing to get by itself, so we're just going to go ahead and fourth root both sides. Now, I can't take the fourth root of 21, and because you're not allowed to use a calculator, we're going to leave it as plus or minus the fourth root of 21. Then I'm going to get x by itself by adding 3 to both sides. I realize this answer looks a little messy, but this is how I want you to leave it. I want you to leave it as 3 plus or minus the fourth root of 21. There we go. Okay? All right, let's try the next problem. We're going to go ahead and subtract 73 on both sides. I get 2x to the fifth equals negative 20. I'm going to divide both sides by 2. I get x to the fifth equals negative 10. Now, if this would have been an even root, if it would have been x squared or x to the fourth, you would know that when you take an even root of a negative number, it's impossible. So you'd stop and say no solution. But because it's an odd root, I can take an odd root of a negative number. Now, negative 10, you cannot take the fifth root of. So you can go ahead and leave your answer as the fifth root of negative 10. That's it. Okay, I have 2 examples for you to try on your own. Remember, I want you to isolate where the exponent's at, then go ahead and raise that to each power. Both of them below, if you take a look at both of them below, they're both even roots. So I want to see a plus or minus in your answer. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, go ahead right at the bottom of the paper, and I'll see you tomorrow in class.